If you want to change your life, you have to start with a simple but uncomfortable truth. You are where you are because of who you've become. And if you want something different, you must become someone different. Most people spend their days reactive. They wake up, check their phone, go through routines, deal with problems, and hope things will somehow improve. But hope without action is just waiting. And waiting rarely changes anything. The moment you decide that your life is your responsibility, everything shifts. Because now you are no longer a victim of circumstances. You are the creator of your direction. You may not control everything that happens to you, but you always control what you do with it. If you want to get whatever you want in life, you must first define whatever you want actually means. Most people stay confused because they are unclear, and confusion leads to hesitation. Clarity leads to power. Write it down. Be specific. Not I want to be successful, but what kind of success? Not I want more money, but how much and why? Once you are clear, the next step is discipline, not motivation. Motivation is temporary, comes and goes. Discipline is what stays when motivation disappears. And the truth is, you won't always feel like doing what is required. But successful people are not controlled by feelings. They are controlled by decisions. Your habits are shaping your future right now. Every small choice either builds the life you want or delays it. What you do daily is more important than what you do occasionally. Reading for 10 minutes, working consistently, learning new skills, staying focused. These things look small, but they compound into something powerful over time. Another important truth is that your environment matters. If you surround yourself with people who complain, you will learn to complain. If you surround yourself with people who grow, you will grow. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your environment. So choose it carefully. But perhaps the most important shift is this: stop waiting for perfect condition. There is no perfect time. There is only now. And now is where all change begins. The people who achieve what they want are not the ones who had the best starting point. They are the ones who started anyway. You will fail at times. You will face rejection. You will doubt yourself. But none of that matters unless you quit. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. Every setback is information. Every mistake is a lesson. If you learn, you grow. If you quit. So decide today that you will take control. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today, take one action that moves you closer to your goal. Then do it again tomorrow. And again at the day after that. Small steps repeated consistently create extraordinary results. If you stay committed, if you stay focused, if you refuse to give up, life will eventually adjust to your standards. Not because it changes for you, but because you change first. And when you change, everything else begins to change with you. Most people underestimate how powerful it is to fully accept responsibility for their life. It is one thing to understand the idea in theory, but it is something entirely different to live by it every single day. Yeah. The moment you stop blaming external circumstances, other people, or past experiences, you begin to reclaim control over your future. As long as you keep pointing fingers, you remain stuck in the same place because blame gives away your power. Responsibility brings it back. Life does not always treat people fairly, and many things happen that are outside of personal control. People are born into different environments, face different challenges, and experience different levels of support. What defines a person is not where they start, but how they respond to what happens to them. Two people can go through similar struggles, yet end up in completely different places in life. Instead of scattered ideas, there is now a focal point. The brain starts filtering decisions based on that focus. What once felt overwhelming becomes structured. Instead of asking, what should I do? There's a clearer question. Does this move me closer to what I want or not? That single shift reduces confusion and increases effectiveness in daily life. Unclear goals often create frustration because effort is being applied without a target. It is like moving fast in a direction without knowing where it leads. Many people work hard but still feel stuck, not because they lack ability, but because they lack precision. Without defining what success looks like in detail, it becomes impossible to measure progress. And if progress cannot be measured, motivation slowly fades. Clarity requires honesty. It forces a person to think deeply about what they truly value, not what sounds good to others. Many people adopt goals based on social pressure or comparison, but those goals rarely sustain long-term commitment. A clear goal is personal. It reflects genuine desire, not borrowed ambition. When something is truly meaningful, discipline becomes easier because the purpose behind it is strong enough to support consistent effort. Being specific also helps eliminate distraction. When you do not know exactly what you want, everything can seem important. You say yes to too many things and your attention gets divided. But when your goal is precise, distractions become easier to recognize and reject. You begin to understand that every yes to something irrelevant is a no to something important. Clarity protects your time and energy. Another important part of clarity is visualization. When you can clearly picture what you are working toward, your mind begins to treat it as something real and achievable. It is no longer just an idea floating in the future. It becomes a structured outcome with steps leading toward it. This mental image influences behavior in subtle ways. Decisions become more aligned. Effort becomes more intentional. Even patience becomes easier because the destination feels defined. Without clarity, people often change direction frequently. They start one thing, then lose interest, then move to another idea, hoping something will eventually work. This creates a pattern of inconsistency. But when a goal is well defined, there is stability and effort. Even when challenges arise, the direction does not change easily because there is a strong understanding of what is being built. Clarity also increases confidence. Uncertainty creates hesitation, but knowing exactly what you want reduces doubt. You may still face difficulties, but you are no longer confused about where you are going. This certainty allows for better decision-making under pressure. Instead of reacting emotionally, you respond strategically based on your defined objective. One of the most overlooked benefits of clarity is that it makes progress visible. When goals are specific, even small improvements can be recognized. This builds momentum. Each small step forward reinforces belief in the process. Without clarity, even real progress can feel invisible, which reduces motivation. But with clear targets, every step counts and every step matters. Clarity does not require perfection. It requires refinement. Goals can evolve as you grow, but they must start with definition. Even an imperfect direction is better than no direction at all. Over time, as you learn and adjust, that clarity becomes sharper. But the initial decision to define what you want is what begins the transformation. In the end, clarity is not just about knowing what you want in theory, but committing to it in detail. It is about giving shape to your ambition so that your actions have something concrete to follow. Once that happens, life stops feeling random and starts becoming intentional. There will always be moments when motivation is high, and those moments can be useful for starting momentum, but they cannot be the foundation of progress. The foundation must be discipline. Motivation can initiate action, but discipline sustains it. Motivation gets you started, but discipline keeps you going. Things become repetitive, difficult, or slow. In the end, relying on motivation alone is like depending on whether to decide your direction. It changes constantly. Discipline, however, is like building an internal compass. No matter how conditions change around you, you stay aligned with your chosen direction. That consistency is what ultimately leads to meaningful and lasting results. What you do on a daily basis is far more important than what you occasionally do with intense effort. Many people underestimate the power of repetition, thinking that success comes from big actions taken once in a while. In reality, life is shaped by small actions repeated consistently over time. The habits you follow every day slowly build your identity, your skills, and ultimately your future. Whether positive or negative habits compound and their effects become more visible as time passes. At first, daily actions may seem insignificant. Waking up a little earlier, reading a few pages, practicing a skill for a short period, or choosing to focus instead of procrastinate may not feel like they are producing immediate results. Because of this, many people dismiss them. They look for faster, more dramatic changes. But real transformation rarely happens in dramatic moments. It happens quietly through repetition when no one is watching and when results are not immediately visible. The mind often struggles to value small actions because it is naturally drawn to big outcomes. It wants quick proof that effort is working, but growth does not follow instant gratification. It follows accumulation. Just like drops of water eventually fill a container, small habits eventually shape major outcomes. A person who reads consistently for a short time every day will eventually accumulate knowledge that far exceeds someone who reads occasionally for long hours. The difference is consistency, not intensity. Daily habits also determine direction. Every repeated action is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. When you repeatedly choose discipline, focus, and learning, you are reinforcing an identity of growth. When you repeatedly choose distraction, delay, or avoidance, you are reinforcing stagnation. Over time, these small decisions build patterns that define your character. You do not suddenly become successful or unsuccessful. You gradually become it through repetition. One of the most powerful aspects of habits is that they reduce the need for constant decision-making. When something becomes habitual, it no longer requires mental effort or negotiation. You do not have to convince yourself each time. This saves energy and allows you to focus on higher level thinking. For example, if productivity becomes a habit, starting work no longer feels like a battle. It becomes automatic. This automation is what allows consistent progress without burnout. However, the same principle applies to negative habits. Small negative actions repeated daily can also compound into significant problems. Delaying tasks, wasting time on distractions, neglecting responsibilities, or avoiding effort may seem harmless in the moment, but over time they accumulate into lost opportunities and stagnation. The danger is that negative habits often feel comfortable, which makes them easier to repeat. This is why awareness is important. Without awareness, habits form unconsciously. Changing life does not require massive effort all at once. It requires changing the pattern of daily behavior. When small habits are adjusted, the long-term trajectory begins to shift. Even a slight improvement in daily actions, when maintained consistently, can lead to significant transformation over time. This is because progress is not linear in the long run. It compounds. Early efforts may look small, but their impact multiplies as time continues. Consistency is what gives habits their power. Doing something once does not create change. Doing it repeatedly creates structure, and structure becomes identity. When actions are repeated long enough, they stop feeling like choices and start feeling like part of who you are. This is why habits are so influential. They eventually shape personality without conscious effort. There is also an emotional aspect to daily habits. When you consistently act in alignment with your goals, even in small ways, you build internal confidence. You begin to trust yourself more because your actions match your intentions. This trust strengthens motivation and reduces internal resistance. On the other hand, when your actions are inconsistent with your goals, internal conflict increases, leading to frustration and self-doubt. The key to harnessing the power of daily habits is not perfection, but repetition. Missing one day does not destroy progress, but quitting the pattern does. The focus should always be on returning to the habit, not on being flawless. Over time, even imperfect consistency creates strong results. Ultimately, life is not shaped by occasional effort, but by repeated behavior. The direction of your future is being influenced by what you choose to do every single day, even in small and seemingly insignificant ways. When those daily actions are aligned with growth, they gradually build a life that reflects that direction. The people you spend time with and the environment you place yourself in have a powerful influence on the direction of your life, often more than you realize. Human beings are naturally adaptive. Over time, you begin to reflect the habits, attitudes, and behaviors of those around you. This happens gradually, not suddenly, which is why many people do not notice the effect until significant change has already taken place. Your surroundings are constantly shaping your thinking even when you are not consciously aware of it. When you are surrounded by people who lack ambition, complain frequently, or avoid responsibility, those patterns start to feel normal. Even if you initially have different goals or a different mindset, repeated exposure to negative behavior can slowly influence your own thinking. It becomes easier to justify procrastination, to delay effort, or to accept mediocrity because the environment reinforces those choices. Over time, what once felt unacceptable can start to feel ordinary. On the other hand, being around people who are focused, disciplined, and growth-oriented can elevate your thinking. When you observe consistent effort, structured habits, and a strong work ethic, those behaviors begin to influence your own standards. You start to adjust your expectations for yourself without even being directly told to change. The environment creates a silent pressure that pushes you either upward or downward, depending on what it contains. This influence is not only social, but also psychological. The brain tends to normalize what it repeatedly observes. If your environment is filled with distraction, laziness, or negativity, your mind starts to treat those states as default behavior. But if your environment reflects productivity, learning, and ambition, your mind begins to align with those patterns. This is why environment is often more powerful than intention. You may intend to improve, but if your surroundings constantly pull you in the opposite direction, progress becomes difficult to sustain. Energy is also a major factor in environment. Every person carries a certain emotional and mental energy, and that energy is transferred through interaction. Ultimately, everything comes down to what you choose to do in this moment. Not tomorrow, not when conditions improve, not when you feel fully ready, but now. Life does not respond to intention alone. It responds to action. Every small step taken today shapes the direction of your future more than any plan ever could. The people who move forward are not the ones who wait for perfect timing, but the ones who understand that timing is created through action. When you begin now and continue consistently, even without perfect conditions, you slowly build a life that reflects effort, courage, and commitment. Over time, that simple decision to start immediately becomes the foundation of everything you achieve.